returned home to Nicaragua. Thanks for watching The Tale of Pryor Arguello. Hello, I'm Jim Lampley. Welcome to this look back at the stories behind Hagler Hearns, possibly the most memorable fight in 30 years of boxing on HBO. It's the most hellacious 8 minutes of combat in modern boxing history. A confrontation so starkly violent, it took away the breath of hardened ringside observers. Marvelous Marvin Hagler and Thomas Hitman Hearns entered the ring at the same level of high-risk commitment in 1985. Their flames met, and within seconds, built a bonfire.
15 rounds of boxing for the undisputed middleweight championship of the world.
In November 1979, Marvin Hagler, in his 50th fight, finally got a shot at the middleweight title. Although he looked like the winner, the champion, Vito Antuofermo, retained the title on a controversial draw. The decision deepened Hagler's frustration and hardened his resolve to earn the respect and admiration that had always eluded him.
The referee said to Pat and I, he stepped aside because when I raised his hand, I wanted to get a picture with him and I. We stepped aside and they called it a draw.
He was devastating. It was like, I lost the fight. Mom, you didn't lose. It was a draw. You both won. I lost the fight because I don't have the title. And this is what he wanted to explain to me, that if you don't get the win, you still lose.
It made me much more stronger, made me meaner, made me more aggressive.
Marvin learned a lesson there that being in Vegas was never a sure thing. From that point on, Marvin said, these right here are going to be my judges from now on.
10 months later, in London, Hagler stopped the new middleweight champion Alan Minter in the third round. But his crowning glory turned into a riot rather than a celebration.
Full beer bottles are raining down on the canvas and bouncing off. The bobbies came to rescue us.
We won the world's title. The belt wasn't presented to us in the ring like you normally do, the new world's champion. We had to run like we did something wrong.
I got here the hard way, and I'm planning on staying here. I'm leaving it up to my manager and trainer to figure out who's next, and I'm planning on being here for a long time.
Thomas Hearns also planned on establishing his place on the boxing scene. In 1981, the undefeated Hearns, then known as the Motor City Cobra, stood on the cusp of superstar status when he faced Sugar Ray Leonard for the welterweight title. In a memorable fight that elevated both men, Leonard rallied to win on a TKO in the 14th round.
It's over, and Ray Leonard is the undisputed welterweight champion of the world against a very game Thomas Hearns.
Boxing really was all that Detroit had, and I believe that Tommy felt that he let the whole city down when he lost that fight. That was a fight that he should have won.
When Thomas lost to Ray Leonard, we went back and there was a lot of rethinking. So Emmanuel made the immediate decision to start to move him up, and so he started the campaign in the 154-pound weight class. And the thought was, okay, we're just going to go on and we're going to reestablish the image.
The images of Thomas Hearns and Marvin Hagler were both born in cities rich with boxing tradition. Hearns' journey began in Detroit, the home of Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, and the legendary Kronk Jim.
In the middle of the city, there's a pillbox-like bunker, brick, red. You go down one flight of stairs. You feel the heat rising as you go down. In some ways, I would imagine it's like Dante's Inferno. In the middle of all this is this little Merlin, this little man, Emmanuel Stewart.
The first time that I met Thomas Hearns, he was a little skinny kid, very quiet, very bashful, a little kind of puppy dog-like sad eyes. And even though he wasn't the most talented guy at the time, he would always be back the next day.
Tommy Hearns was not a great athlete. In fact, he was a skinny guy who said, I'm tired of people stealing my coats. Can you help me? Emmanuel said, okay, and threw him in there with a kid who was skillful and broke his nose immediately. And then Emmanuel looked at him to see what his reaction was going to be. And Tommy Hearns straightened his nose back out and went back in there.
It was like part manager, trainer, but also like a father to some degree too, being that he, like I, came from a fatherless home.
We spent so much time together. After a while, Emmanuel did become something like a father figure to me. Not just to develop me as a fighter, but to develop me as a young man.
In Brockton, Massachusetts, the hometown of Rocky Marciano, Marvin Hagler would find a boxing family of his own under the guidance of brothers Goody and Pat Petronelli.
From 1969 to 73, Marvin worked with Pat and Goody, who had a construction company.
Me and Marvin both were young laborers on the job and would do the bull work.
I worked construction for 8 years, and while I was digging, I was thinking, there's got to be a better way.
He had said that he's going to become champ, and he did.
When he came out of here, he referred to us as Whiteys. And, you know, I had a kick out of that, and it took him a while to really get to trust us Whiteys.
The Petronellis, for me, they've been like a father and a brother. I was able to talk about anything under the sun with them, to share even things that when I was upset or my personal life or whatever.
It was climbing that mountain together, Pat, myself, and Marvin. It was a triangle. There's nothing stronger than a triangle.
Despite the support of the Petronellis, Hagler simply didn't feel respected inside the ring. So he went to a court of law to get what he couldn't get in the court of public opinion.
Marvin wanted to be called Marvelous. We tried to educate the general public to the name Marvelous Marvin. We thought we had done it until we ran up against the guy who was in charge of ABC Sports, and he said, if you want us to use the name Marvelous Marvin, go to court. So I rose to the challenge. I asked the probate court judge to change the name of Marvin Nathaniel Hagler to Marvelous Marvin.
It wasn't like he grew up always wishing his mom had called him Marvelous, you know. I mean, it was a need inside him.
I really felt as though I never got the respect which I deserve in the beginning part of my career. And I just remember when Joe Frazier had said, you know, you got 3 strikes against you, 1 you're southpaw, 2 you're good, and 3 you're black.
While people were hesitant to face Hagler, the lanky Thomas Hearns didn't have the look of a future world champion.
He looked like you could blow him over, but out of nowhere, he possessed this punch. And it was almost like there was Tommy's body, and then there was this right hand that was from another person. It was demonic.
When Tommy hit people with his right hand, most of his career, they disappeared like those people in that Star Wars, you know, they vaporized.
That right hand goes to it's over. He hit him with some right hand.
The way that he struck with such deadly force and precision accuracy, it was only natural to give him some kind of devastating name.
Ring magazine put him on the cover in a gangster suit with a machine gun, calling him the Hitman.
In 1982, a retired Sugar Ray Leonard refused a rematch with Thomas Hearns and also brushed aside a showdown with Hagler.
A fight with this great man, this great champion, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, could be one of the greatest fights in the history of boxing. But unfortunately, it'll never happen.
Hagler and Hearns turned their attention to each other and were set to meet in May of 1982. But an injury to Hearns' right hand forced a postponement.
Marvin found out that the fight with Hearns was off, and I've never seen him so angry. I mean, he just wanted to fight this guy so badly.
He started complaining about his little baby pinky. You know how many people will give $1 million for that little baby pinky?
For $1 million, I cut that thing off.
For 2 years, Hagler would continue his reign as middleweight champ, while Thomas Hearns, now fighting at 154 pounds, would put Hagler on notice. His shocking second-round knockout of the legendary Roberto Duran sounded the return of the hitman.
Oh, he's out. He's out. He was out before he hit the canvas.
If there's a sweet spot in boxing, it was that night where Hearns' fist met the point of Roberto Duran's chin. He was out cold, just boom, out. He looked like 140 pounds of pancake batter, just splat, down he went.
When I hit Roberto Duran, it seemed like it was just a thrust of power just went through my arm.
After humiliating Duran, a confident Thomas Hearns would move up to the 160-pound weight class, and the long-awaited showdown was set. Hostilities between the two fighters grew during a 20-city press tour.
Keep that belt by your bed, because it'll be the last time you see it.
When he would pull a little baseball cap on, war across the top, you knew, and I think Thomas Hearns knew, that it was about war with Hagler.
It's a mental toughness, and that's what I feel. War, that's what's on my mind.
Marvin was even more quiet than Tommy and said less. So in order to make the press conferences interesting, Thomas Hearns had to be the outgoing, talkative one.
And come April 15, in 3 rounds, I would be the greatest. I finished hitting with 1, 2, 3. I want to back off him just a little bit so I can hit him with 4. Just back off.
Seeing his ugly face every day, I mean, you get tired, man. You know, and then he had that big mouth and he's telling what he's going to do. He's going to knock my bald head off.
I already know who the winner is. And as for my man say he never fights a man twice, that's right. He's never going to fight me again, because this is going to be his last fight.
To prepare for the biggest fight of his career, Marvin Hagler did what he always did. He went into isolation.
One of the terms that Marvin used for his training camp was that he was going to go to jail.
And I call it jail because you're sacrificing and you're away from no partying, no drinking, no woman.
Once he started this schedule, he wouldn't sit down and talk if the President of the United States came in.
When I was working out with different guys the same size as him, I like to see him fall like a tree, you know. Boom.
While Hagler was training in Massachusetts, Hearns was more visible in Las Vegas, at home in the spotlight.
In the days preceding the fight, Thomas Hearns just exuded confidence, maybe even borderline being cocky.
I remember walking through the casino at Caesar's Palace one night. It must have been 11:15 at night. I saw a big crowd around a craps table.
And there was Thomas Hearns shooting crap. To people all around him, that led him to believe, geez, what a relaxed guy. This guy, you know, he must going to be win easy.
The night of the fight, the locker room of Thomas Hearns was overflowing with followers of the hitman.
Thomas Hearns, maybe more than any fighter in history, had the biggest entourage. And in the dressing room before the fight, it's 1 million people.
They were in the room next to us, and they were banging the walls, and Marvin was putting his boxing shoes on, and he looked up and he says, "You can't take those guys in the ring with him. It's just going to be me and them."
In his hotel room prior to the fight, Thomas Hearns received a massage from a member of his entourage. That act upset trainer Emanuel Stewart.
One of the guys from one of the hang-ons, at least, massaged Thomas's legs down, and when I came up, I ran him out of the room, and I knew then that was a major problem. The massage leaves the body spent, and so going into the fight, we was worried.
In the dressing room, I was saying to myself, I was thinking in my mind that in order for me to win this fight, I gotta go right out there and take it to him and get rid of him.
The fight would be Thomas Hearns' first in the middleweight division, which dictated the strategy of Hagler. He would try to impose his strength on Hearns from start to finish.
He'll have to start earlier because he's as ready as he's ever been. He's the best shape he's ever been in his life. He'll knock out Tommy Hearns.
Goody called it. Goody said, "Tommy's going to come gunning right out after you. Just make a street fight out of it. He'll come right out at you, and you just come right out with him."
People just saw two trains ready to collide.
This is the main event of the night. 12 rounds of boxing for the undisputed middleweight championship of the world.
I think when people saw them come in, Hagler and Hearns, and they looked at these two men who sometimes lived in Sugar Ray Leonard's shadow, and they said they are desperate to win this fight because their legacy could depend on this.
And the entourage now of Thomas Hearns making its way toward the ring here. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, of course. He had his game face on, Ray, somewhere around Thursday.
Everybody expects to see a contest here decided by their strength, decided by their styles, decided by their will.
This was going to be high megaton action. One guy who's called a hitman, and the other guy who walks around talking about destroying destruction no matter what you ask him.
Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
I suddenly noticed Marvin Hagler is beating himself up in his face.
Ed Schuyler, the Associated Press, said later, if the introductions had gone one more minute, Hagler would have stopped himself.
When they got in the ring, I mean, I could not believe the tension
that was in that fight.
I'm just cautioning you now. Obey my command at all times. Shake hands, good luck to both of you.
When Marvin Hagler came out of his corner, he was carrying with him all the frustrations and broken dreams of his whole life. And he was going to take them all out on somebody else.
We're underway. And the pace is up-tempo right at the opening bell.
The moment in that fight was in the first 10 seconds of the fight. You know, I mean, you couldn't get any more up. And it went on for the first 3 minutes of that fight.
Tremendous pace in the first round.
I expected this, Barry. Both guys are going at it.
Hearns getting the better of it right now.
I dropped, I stopped, I was hitting him with triple I. Man, I was trying to hit him with everything.
The second round, these guys would definitely pace themselves. There has been no boxing at all, just fighting him.
I went to jump right on top of him, not giving him time to think, not giving him time to use his reach or that right hand.
There was a left hand by Hagler that stood Hearns straight up, and a right hand. Both men have felt the wrath of the other.
The combinations were unbelievable. They just both were just bashing each other to the point where I felt like sweat coming out of the TV screen.
And it did catch Hagler, but he didn't take a backward step there. This is still the first round. Blood on the face of Marvin Hagler again. We can't quite tell where it's coming from.
Everything was in fast motion. It was so quickly. I forgot how many rounds it went.
Writers from the New York Times and Los Angeles Times and papers from all over the world, they've got their mouths open.
This may be the most brutal, even round you've ever seen in boxing.
At the end of the first round of that fight, I remember thinking, could there ever have been a better round in the history of boxing?
The first round ended. Tommy's told me my right hand is broke.
I hit him a little too high up over his head. Just crushed my right hand. He had a hard head. I mean, I couldn't believe how hard his man's head was. I said, man, I see why you keep your head bald and shaved bald, because you got a weapon here. You got a hard weapon.
When I think off to the back, the most exciting 3 rounds in boxing, and he did that with a broken hand, it just lets you realize how much courage and determination he had.
Broken or not, it was Hagler's ability to withstand Hearns' best weapon that shifted the fight's momentum.
After he hit me with the right hand, I think that was his best shot, and I knew for myself that in order for you to knock me out, you better hit me with that ring post because I ain't going nowhere.
Nobody could take Hearns' punches. When Hagler shook it off, I remember thinking, the fight's over. Bang, just like that.
In the second round, with Hearns' right hand already broken, Marvin Hagler would gain the advantage.
That was a hook. Good left hook, and Hearns left his feet. Hearns is hurt.
That was a hook again, Barry.
Hearns is definitely hurt. Trying to weather the storm here in round 2. Big round for Marvin Hagler.
In the third round, blood coming from a cut in the middle of Hagler's forehead came to the attention of referee Richard Steele.
And now we're going to get a moment for the doctor to come in as that cut just opened up.
I took Marvin Hagler to the doctor, and the doctor looked at the cut and allowed it to go on.
It's not bothering your cut. No, it's not bothering his side. Let him go.
I couldn't understand where the cut came from because I don't think it was from a right hand. It wasn't blood over my eyes, and I couldn't understand why the referee was trying to step in and give Tommy more time to rest.
In the back of his mind, I'm sure, sensed that here we go again. They're going to find some way to take away from me what I've earned. I'll decide if I can't go on.
He knew he had to do something to take it into his own hands. I think his great quote was, he saw blood and he turned into a bull.
You remember the game Pac-Man? And so if I just keep, and sooner or later I'm going to catch you.
Right hand sends Hearns. He doesn't know where he is. Hagler goes in for the kill now.
He's gone. He's gone.
He's down, and he may be out.
It's the absolute moment of his life, and he goes after Hearns with everything he has, and he catches him behind the ear.
And then Tommy went down in a sort of weird fashion, like a beach umbrella that's been caught by the wind.
He goes down, and I'm counting.
5, 6, 7.
Thomas Hearns' heart is just big as he is. He gets up and collapses in my arms.
It's over. This one is history. Marvin Hagler, a tremendous victory.
I love the knockout, but I believe that if Tommy would have got up in that fight there, I believe that I never really want to hurt anybody in the ring or kill anybody, but I believe that he was really going to be hurt.
For Marvin Hagler, this was the peak of his 12-year career.
I told you I was going to eat him up like Pac-Man. I figured once I get through the right hand, then it was all mine.
Made us all stand 10 feet high. We picked him up, walked around the ring with him. He's our champ. He's finally got the recognition he should have had.
I don't think until that moment that any or many of us realized how important it was to Marvin Hagler to be considered a great fighter.
I told you a long time ago that I was a great fighter. You said, not yet. Not yet, you said. You still got to prove yourself. Well, did I do that tonight?
This night, Hagler got all he deserved. He had worked for this night and for this moment. He had to decide at some point, how much is this worth to me? And he decided it was worth a lot. And he was rewarded. It's a great thing.
While Hagler and his handlers celebrated, the sight of Hearns laid out on the canvas was difficult for his supporters to witness.
It was the first time I'd ever saw Tommy actually down. He was totally drained.
One of Tommy's handlers jumped in the ring and lifted him up like a baby. It was bad enough that he got stopped, but he didn't need to be carried back like he was an unconscious slab of meat.
Weeks later, I said, Tom, you ever think what would have happened if that fight would have gone the distance? And he said, yeah, one of us would have been carried out. I said, wait a minute, one of you was carried out.
After the fight, Hagler and Hearns met face to face, no longer enemies, but partners in history.
The man showed his greatness, and then I have to say that it was one damn good fight.
Went to visit Marvin. The question was, man, what was you taking? What made you stand up? And Marvin's answer was, I didn't want to fall. I wasn't going to fall. I was determined to win this fight.
I do give a lot of respect for Tommy at this moment, beyond the fact that, you know, he came to fight. He showed me great skills and a lot of courage.
Hearns is remembered today as a great champion who came up a little short against the two best fighters of his time.
Those two fights, Hearns had his two golden moments and lost them both. That's what he's remembered for. He put on a hell of a fight twice, but he didn't win at either time, and it's not as good as winning.
I really hate even doing this interview for this. Anytime those fights are ever brought up, I leave because I relive the pain too much.
My place in history, I leave it up to the people that can call the shot. Well, wherever they place me, I'm be happy. I'll be satisfied because they don't have to place me at all.
Now Marvin Hagler was considered marvelous in the court of public opinion as well as the court of law.
It came brutally, it came against all odds, but it came the way everything had come from Marvin Hagler.
That's the way I had to do it. That's the only way. That is how sweet it is.
That performance became his identification badge for the rest of his career. Those 8 minutes transformed him from just being a terrific pro into a star.
One should grab oneself one of these Red Guard sports sticks because one would hate to be considered malodorous by one's chums.
And one of the great middleweights of all time.
The victory over Hearns would be the peak of Hagler's career. He would have one more super fight against Sugar Ray Leonard. Hagler would lose a split decision and retire, never putting a pair of gloves on again. But no matter what happened later, Marvin Hagler and Thomas Hearns' performance on April 15, 1985 will always be remembered for boxing's most unforgettable 8 minutes.
For great stars to do that, to put themselves on the line, take all those risks in that big moment on the stage is so rare that it has a timeless, epic quality to it.
Because of Hagler's abrupt retirement 2 years later, there would be no rematch of Hagler-Hearns, no sequel to dilute or diminish the impact of their abbreviated street fight. And for Hearns, just as had been the case following his heartbreaking loss to Leonard 4 years before, his image as a great warrior was further enhanced. Hearns' career proves that great fights can establish a fighter's greatness, whether the record shows he won or lost. Thanks for watching The Tale of Hagler-Hearns.